everyone, Elsie Jensen here. Right now we are going to be doing our dinner prep for tonight. So we are going to prep some ribs that we're going to do a nice little oven like slow cook on, and then our baked potatoes we're going to prep them up because we're going to be making twice baked potatoes. So let's make our dry rub for our thing for our ribs right now. We're going to add in about a cup of brown sugar. And then we're going to add in some garlic salt, paprika, onion powder, and black pepper. So we're going to add in about a tablespoon of onion or garlic salt. We're going to give a good shake around. And then we are going to add in about a tablespoon of onion powder. I'm just going to take the lid off. Good shake. About a tablespoon of paprika. There we go. And then a teaspoon of black pepper. If you want your ribs to have more of a kick, you could add in some red pepper, cayenne pepper. But black pepper is good for the more mild ones. Now we're going to take this dry rub, going to mix it all around into that sugar. And then we're going to rub this on our ribs here. But before I rub it on there and get my hands all dirty, I'm going to get some aluminum foil ready for it. So we're just going to get a couple sheets out ready to put it in. Okay. Now let's start rubbing in our ribs. There we go. Really get it coated. This is going to add just a great flavor to it as it slow cooks, this nice dry rub. There. And then get our first out. So we got a good coating on the top of it. Now we're going to add a good helping on the bottom. And really bring in those, rub it all the way around. Okay. And now we'll seal this one up, and then we'll seal it again with some more in just a second. But let's get our second out. Trying to keep one hand as clean as possible. I'm going to take this rib, lay it in here. We're going to take the rest of this dry rub, and we're going to really coat our ribs here with it. I'm going to take whatever also fell into my pan here. We're going to dump that on as well. There we go. Really coat this up. There. All the way around. And then we're going to fold this up. Now I'm going to give my hands a quick wash. Okay, and then we're going to really wrap these up good with some more aluminum foil. Go around this way. Give it, as they call, a Texas clutch here. So we've got our good one on. Let's get this guy. And then both of these are bone up right now. When we lay these on our baking sheet to bake, we're going to lay them bone underneath down. And these are going to bake in the oven at 275 for about 2.5 to 3 hours, give or take, until that meat is nice and tender and juicy. And we are also going to bake up our baked potatoes at the exact same time. That way they'll be ready to turn into our twice baked potatoes. So I have 6 russets here. I gave them a really nice scrub. And now we're going to get out 6 pieces of aluminum foil. And we're going to add a little bit of butter and salt to each one, which is going to give your potatoes just a really tender, delicious inside and a great like salty crust to them. So I think I've got 1, 2, 3, one more. We've got a stick of butter. We're not going to use the whole stick We're just going to cut off a little pat to go in each one. And you do want to make sure your potatoes are well scrubbed and nice and wet when they're going in. Grab a knife because that's going to seal in the liquid in them and keep them nice. So I'm going to cut 6 little pats here. So it'll probably be about 2 tablespoons of butter when you're done with it. Again, you don't need a huge amount. Let me grab my salt too. And what we're going to do is we're going to put our potato in, a pat of butter in, and a sprinkle of salt. Wrap it up. Make sure we'll put the butter side facing up, and that butter will melt over the potato and just make a delicious kind of buttered crust on the bottom of it, but keeps it nice and tender and moist. And this gives that like crust of it, the skin, just so delicious. So I recommend, if you've never made baked potatoes this way, it is like the key to having like restaurant quality baked potatoes. They're just so tender and moist in the inside, and they're perfect for mashing up into twice baked potatoes. So get a little sprinkle here and wrap it. Now you could also use like coarse salt or like sea salt too. Those would be great. That has the salt dissolves a little bit slower with those. There we go. And you could also sprinkle a little pepper if you wanted to. Wrap this up. One more. Got our little pat of butter on. A little pinch of salt. Wrap it up tight. And these will go in the oven with the ribs, and they're going to cook for about, again, we're going to take them out in about 2.5 hours to turn them into our twice baked potatoes. Hi everyone, Elsie Jensen here. Today we are going to finish off our ribs that we put in the oven a couple hours ago. We're going to make some twice baked potatoes, creamed kale. We're going to bake up our chocolate sourdough loaf, and then I think we'll have some fresh watermelon for fruit today. So I've got my chocolate sourdough loaf. This was made using my chocolate sourdough starter, and we put dried cherries, chocolate chips, and walnuts in here. So I'm really excited about this because a chocolate cherry walnut loaf sounds just fantastic. We're going to give a nice big kind of expansion score. And then we'll do our cute little wheat leaf. And another one. Okay, my Dutch oven has been preheated to 500 degrees, so it is nice and hot. We're going to transfer this in here carefully. And then we're going to put our lid back on, and we're going to put this in the oven at 500 degrees for 20 minutes. There we go. So this is going, make sure when you're carrying the Dutch ovens, you're really careful because they are very hot. My oven's preheated because that's where I had my Dutch oven. I'm going to put it in there. Then I'm going to set my timer for 20 minutes. We're going to cook it for 20 minutes in that Dutch oven at 500 with the lid on. That's going to give it its nice burst and everything like that. And then we'll take the lid off and cook it for another 20 minutes with the lid off at 450 to give a nice kind of golden color to it.
You have a question? Where did you get the oven mitt?
Oh, good old Amazon. It's funny. I originally got a pair like several years ago from an Amazon pop-up store with my friend. Like she bought them we were together and she bought them for me for a Christmas gift. And then I bought a second pair because they are my favorite because they're little bears and I love them. And so I have some other crazy ones, but these are by far my favorite. Okay, let's get our not sweet potatoes, but our baked potatoes out of the oven. Steamy.
How was lunch?
Lunch was fantastic. We made some brats, naan, sauteed onions and sauerkraut, and then I haven't told the kids about it yet, but we made this peanut butter graham cracker bar with a chocolate top on it. It's in the fridge. We're gonna have it for dessert tonight. I'm going to just open these up real quick. So they start to cool off just a little bit. These are our baked potatoes that we're going to turn into twice baked potatoes. but they're going to be hot to handle. So if I open them, they'll just steam off a little bit. But I gave them a good scrub. And then while they were still wet, we added a pat of butter, some salt, and then wrapped them up in foil. And we cooked them on a low temperature so that while the ribs are cooking, so they're nice and soft and tender inside. But they are hot. Okay, let's whip up some of our homemade barbecue sauce to go with our ribs tonight. A lot of times I just use Sweet Baby Ray's, but I had no barbecue sauce. So we'll make up our own. It's a super simple recipe. We're going to start with some ketchup here. You need about, I want to say, a cup or so, cup and a half. I'm going to squeeze it in here. And we're going to add in about a cup of brown sugar because I do like my sweet, like a very sweet barbecue sauce versus like the super tangy ones. I'm a sweet and mild versus spicy too. So we're going to add in a cup of brown sugar. These are a half a cup. And I'm just kind of letting them be over full because I'm not going to take the extra time to pack them down. And we're going to add in about a tablespoon of onion powder. About a teaspoon of ground mustard. And a little bit of black pepper, about a half a teaspoon. And then we are going to add in about a fourth a cup of Worcestershire sauce.
You have a question. What's the difference between light and dark brown sugar?
It is the amount of molasses in it. I think it's like one uses molasses and one uses sorghum. They have the dark brown flavor or sugar is going to have a much stronger flavor to it. So I think it's maybe that they even use like a more processed one for the light brown. I'm not 100% sure, but that dark brown sugar does have a stronger molasses. This is funny. So these are all light brown sugars in here, but as you can see, they look like the layers of earth. Some have even less molasses in it. These two ones are like the organic ones from Costco you buy in bulk. This was just Domino's light brown sugar, which looks almost like regular sugar, like they added no extra special stuff to it. And we're going to add in some salt, about a teaspoon of salt. You don't need too much because that ketchup already has a little bit of salt in there. And we're going to add in some apple cider vinegar, about a fourth of a cup. If you like yours tangier, you can add more. But I don't, again, want mine super tangy. And then as we cook it, I'll adjust to see if we need any more into it. But it's really easy to make your own barbecue sauce, especially in a pinch, as long as you have ketchup on hand. It says, throw in some literally like brown sugar, vinegar, and mustard and onion powder, and voila. And we're going to let it kind of simmer together, warm up. And then once all that brown sugar has kind of dissolved in there, we'll give it a good taste, see if we need to add any more. But this is what we're going to be coating on our ribs before, and then we'll like glaze them and do a quick little roast on them to kind of get them extra sticky. Okay. I've got that searing there. Let me chop up our herbs for our twice baked potatoes. That way we'll have them ready to mix them in. We're going to add in some parsley and some green onions to our twice baked potatoes. So grab a good handful of parsley. And these were pretty big green onions. So we're just going to use, I think, 2, because I don't want them overly onion. Sometimes my kids say, oh, you put too much in. Grab my knife here. With the parsley, just pull off any of the bigger stalks in the bottom like that, just because they don't chop up nicely, and then you'll get a bit more of a chewy texture in. They still have a little bit of that flavor of the parsley in it, but in like a potato where you're going to really notice the texture, you want to make sure you get all of that off. And here we go. Just a few more. And I was just out checking out my garden today. I was doing a little like yard work. And I feel like my parsley has definitely taken off, and I can start harvesting that soon. My basil, it's slow going, but once it does start truly like full blooming, then I'll have basil for days. And that takes about a month for it to get nice big plants. And we need a bit more sunshine. We've had so many rainy days here in Tennessee recently, which is great because I don't have to water. But I need some more sunshine for it to really grow. We're gonna give a nice little mince up on here. And there we go. And the reason you just want to mince it small because you don't want to have just like a giant leaf in the middle of your potato. So here is our parsley. Now we're going to take our 2 green onions. I'm going to I'll take off a little bit more. I want primarily the nice green parts because they have the more mild of the flavors. Chives also work really well in this. If you don't know the difference between chives and green onions, they're in the same family, but chives are very small and thin. So they're definitely more delicate and less noticeable as wise as texture, but the same kind of flavor. I actually think they've got a pretty strong kick to chives, where green onions, you've noticed the texture more, but it's not quite as strong of a flavor. It's a little bit more mellow. We're just going to go over again, because we want a nice kind of smaller. Okay, now we have these ready. We'll put them to the side. And we're going to start cutting open our potatoes and scooping out the inside. I'm going to get a spoon for this. Let's give our barbecue sauce a little stir. There we go. And then I'm going to bring these, make sure that tray's, sometimes I forget I take a tray out of the oven and I'll grab it and I'm like, oh, that's hot. But this is cooled down. I am going to need one of these. I find, get one and just hold your potato with it. That way you don't burn yourself, because you can wait for the potato to cool down completely. But if you do that, then your butter doesn't quite melt as nicely in it. So we're going to just kind of cut this around, kind of move off this whole little skin here. And we're going to scrape out the potato insides. Now just be careful. Don't try to get so close to the skin that you poke through. Now it's not the end of the world if you poke through. It just won't hold its cute little boat shape. So pretend like you're whittling out a canoe here. A little delicious potato canoe that you're going to fill with cheese and sour cream and butter and everything that makes potatoes delicious. Because to be honest, would you eat a potato without some butter on it? You know, just by itself, they're not as good. It's what you put on them that make them delicious. So we've got our first little potato boat ready. And for these, you definitely want to use your like russet potato. They've got the good contexture for it. They're the best for baking versus like a Yukon gold potato or a red potato or new potato. There we go. We'll just remove off that upper skin. And then we're just going to gently scoop these guys out. There we go. And they can get a little bit hot. So again, wear a little oven mitt, or if you really want to, you could wait until they cool down, scrape them out, and then use melted butter instead of like room temperature butter. Here we go. And potato number 2. I find the bigger the potato, the better. I was, for the longest time, I kept buying just like the bag of potatoes. And you know, when you get like the bag of those potatoes, they're not very big, they're smaller. And I was like, what is going on? Why can't I find like the really big russets? Like at Costco, you get the big bag and you get giant baking russets. And finally, I just got to hand pick them out at the grocery store. And even then, you can't even find the big ones like you can at Costco. And my kids are always saying, these are the tiniest baked potatoes. Can you even classify them as a baked potato? Loki, no barks. Our dogs are starting to notice that it's summer and everybody is out walking. Our neighborhood pool opened up this week, and so our kids have been like loving it. But that also means lots of walking and the dogs seeing everybody in our neighborhood walk. Okay. Let's give our barbecue sauce here a little stir. It's got a nice little bubble on it. And I'm going to turn it down to a low because I don't want it to bubble too much where that sugar turns to like a candy. And we're going to give it a little taste. Delicious. You can really taste like that nice onion powder to it. It gives it a really savory flavor. Okay, let's cut this guy off. And then we'll have big bear. Okay, scoop this out.
I have a question. What else are you making tonight?
We're going to make creamed kale. We've got some sourdough baking in the oven, a chocolate sourdough loaf with walnut, chocolate chips, and cherry using our chocolate starter. And then we have we're going to do creamed kale and then our ribs. I think I said creamed kale twice, but you know. Here we go. These are the little itty bitty baby ones. Growing up, I always loved, these were one of our favorite things my mom made. Now, I am the youngest of 10 here, and so when she would make these, she would be making a whole bunch of them. And she would always get mad at us if we'd come and steal the insides. Like she would sit there, make it, but hadn't stuffed it yet, and then we'd come by, steal a little spoonful of the mashed insides with the butter and the cheese. And she's like, stop eating it, there won't be enough. And there was always one potato at the end that had like nothing in it because we kept stealing all the insides. Last potato here. Cut it through. You could also, I've seen it where people just cut the potatoes in half and then you can take 6 potatoes and turn them into 12 twice baked potatoes. But I like making the little boats. I think they're cuter that way. Here we go. And you just make sure they're well baked. So these were in the oven for 3 hours at 275. So they are nice and soft and tender inside. Okay. Let me move this out of the way, and then we're going to start adding all the good stuff. You grab my stick of butter. Loki. Can't even see outside, it's dark. Okay, we're going to add a whole stick of butter because they're going to be scrumptious and luscious and absolutely delicious. Actually, I think we're going to add just 6 tablespoons. I lied. And let me grab a spoon to mash with. And you're just going to take your room temperature butter and we're going to start mashing it in because we want it to melt up and make them nice and creamy. Just wonderful. There we go. And now we're going to add some sour cream to this. Let me grab a spoon. So we're going to put in about a half a cup of sour cream. These are just going to make them like, think of everything that you put in a loaded baked potato is going into our twice baked potatoes. But we'll mix it all up. We'll restuff our potatoes and then we're going to bake them with a little bit of cheese on the top. So we're going to mix that up. It's going to make it nice and creamy and delicious. There. And then we're going to add in a handful of cheese. There we go. That is about, I want to say, a half a cup of cheese. And don't worry, we're going to add more cheese. We'll add more when we're going to put a nice kind of cheesy layer on the top. So we've got a nice handful of cheese. We're going to add in some salt. We have 6 potatoes here, so you're going to probably want close to a teaspoon and a half because we got to put it in there, and potatoes are pretty bland without the salt.
You have a question? Any bacon?
No bacon. I was almost tempted to cook up some bacon, but I was like, oh, I don't know if we'll have time to get the bacon in and everything. Now, if you have leftover bacon, add it in there. It's delicious. Okay, now we're going to add in our green onions. This is, again, about a tablespoon of green onions, about a tablespoon of parsley. We're going to give this a good mix. It's going to make it gorgeous. Gives you that pop of green. Now, you can always eat the potatoes just like this, and they'd be a delicious, like, loaded things. But stuff them back in that skin. And I will say, make sure you scrubbed your skin because eating the skin is delicious too. Okay. So now we have this scrumptious mashed potato in there, and we're going to pop it back in there, and we'll rebake the potatoes for a few minutes after we top them with cheese. There we go. Give us a nice stir. Let me grab a smaller baking sheet. Say Loki is wanting to greet everybody in the neighborhood, or he could be barking at his shadow. That has happened a couple of times where we're like, he'll be looking out our windows into our backyard, and he's barking. I'm like, well, nobody's back there. It's fenced in. And he sees himself, and he's just barking and barking. So we're going to take our little boats here. We're going to fill them up. They're going to be bigger. They're going to stuff out more than what you put in. So you're probably going to have to go back and add a little bit more because we've added in the sour cream, the butter, the cheese. So it's a bit more surface area in there. But we're going to load them up, and then I'll come back through and add some more to each one. But fill them into their delicious vessels. Here we go. And I will say, homemade twice-baked potatoes are better than any restaurant's twice-baked potatoes because you can tell at a restaurant that they have been like reheated, and there's nothing better with them like coming out of the oven just piping hot and fresh and ooey gooey deliciousness. So I've got these coated up. And fill this guy. Just kind of stuff them in there. Okay. Just 2 more to stuff up, and then we'll go through. Now, if you want them to be like super bougie presentable, put your potato stuff in a piping bag, and then you can use one of those fancy little piping circles that give you that ruffled edge, and then they can look extra bougie. But like I said, who has time for that stuff?
You have a question? How many are you feeding tonight?
We are feeding 8 tonight. We're going to pause real quick. Again, my mom is in Germany, so it's just our 7 plus my stepdad. My little ones will share it, and then Evie, who I swear must not be from our family. She does not like potatoes in any way, shape, or form. Crazy. Okay. We're going to take the lid off, and then we're going to bake it at 450. So I'm going to pop this. Look at our gorgeous chocolate sourdough loaf. Look at that pop. It looks amazing. This was a new recipe, so I'm excited to try it. Oh, I know. He's looking at my starters. I fed them, but clearly I did not cook it. My chocolate one's exploding. Every single one. I think it's because it's hot in our kitchen as well.
You have a question. So for the potatoes, it's bake at 250 for 3 hours and then stuff them?
275. 250 would probably work well. I just put them in with my ribs, but they are perfect temperature that way. Okay, I'm gonna set my oven now to 450. So it was at 500. Now we're going to bake at 450. And then I'm going to set my timer. Well, I'm going to set it at 19 minutes. That way we have a minute to get over here if we're busy at that part. Okay. So, and we'll be popping these back in the oven. Actually, while we do that, I'm going to take out my ribs and then I'm going to bring my oven right here to 400 degrees because we're going to take our ribs out and we're going to baste them with our homemade barbecue sauce. And then you put them back in so that glaze on them really like gets delicious. So let me put my oven here up to. So I have what I was, I'm like, I got my 2 ovens in the house. I love that oven more than this oven. That one was an expensive oven. This one wasn't so expensive, but it's much nicer. That one has all the bells and whistles. This one is like a plain Jane, but I will say this oven has a bread proofing setting on it, which I love. So if you aren't familiar with that, it keeps my oven at 95 degrees. And then I can pop my bread in there to proof to, you know, bulk up. And it like turns out perfect every single time. We're going to go back through and add in our delicious extras. Can't have any of this deliciousness go to waste. Really stuff it on. Again, if you're more about the looks, what you should do is just pipe it in there and then it will look even prettier. And now we're going to cover them with a little bit of shredded cheese. I told you we're going to have more cheese. This is going to give you that nice little cheesy crust layer on top of them. And this is just how we always had them growing up. And so this is always just reminds me, this was always like a special dinner growing up. My mom was more of the like everything in a pot dinner. So when anything took a little bit more, they were special dinners. Okay, we've got these on. We're gonna pop these in just a second. They only need about 10 minutes to get bubbly, so we don't want to add them in yet. Let's get our ribs over here. Actually, I'll just keep this over here and we'll work over here. So we've got our ribs. Bring it a little closer here. We're gonna unwrap them. We did take a video of it, so we will attach it to our video later when we make the long form of it. But we made a dry rub out of this using brown sugar, paprika, onion powder, black pepper, and rubbed it all over them so you can see they're very tender. So I'm trying to slide them off without having them fall completely apart. And then we wrapped them up in aluminum foil, which is also known as a Texas clutch. There we go. Got the first one. I'm going to grab a paper towel because I splashed a little. And now we're going to baste them with the barbecue sauce. If you try to cook them in the barbecue sauce straight from the beginning, a lot of times that barbecue sauce will caramelize up and burn. Nice and hot. Here we go. And these are baby back ribs. Although I have to say the baby back ribs are not the same as when they were when I was younger. They're much more meaty nowadays. And they almost resemble a spare rib. And I have tried to get them from so many different places to be like the OG ones. But I have not been able to find them. I don't know if our pigs are just fatter now. Here we go. And you can keep those juices in there because those will just keep them nice and tender. Slide this over here. Okay, now we're going to baste it with our barbecue sauce. We're not going to use all of it on there. We're going to use about half of it. And that way, if people want more barbecue sauce on theirs for the second round, they can add it in if you like yours really wet, which I do. I'm always like, more barbecue sauce. Here we go. And these have a nice little tanginess with that apple cider vinegar and the Worcestershire, but not so tangy. It's not like there's some places that have like the really southern barbecue sauce, which I feel is like just vinegar. But this is like a perfect kind of mixture of sweet and savory and tangy. And then we'll pop them in the oven that we're going to have at 400. And we'll let them kind of cook for the last like 10 or so minutes, 10, 15 minutes. And that's going to allow this barbecue sauce to get a nice little, like, to get like almost a little crust on it. Here we go. We're going to just dabble back over. And perfect. There we go. So let's pop these back in. They're already like tender, falling apart. This part is to really add that barbecue crust on it. So I'm going to pop it in my oven right here. We'll slide in our baked potatoes right underneath it. Okay. Now we're ready to make our creamed kale. I'm gonna wipe it out. Got a little bit of the rib juices in there. Okay, for our creamed kale, we're going to start with a little bit of olive oil, a little bit of butter, because I feel like the mixture does it perfect, and then we'll add some cream and stuff like that towards the end. But we're going to saute them and tenderize them up first. So I'm going to turn on my burner. We're going to put in, that's about 1.5 tablespoons of butter. And then we're going to add about 1 tablespoon of olive oil. I will say the combination of cooking with a mixture of butter and olive oil works really good. I find if you use all butter, a lot of times the milk solids in the butter will burn up. If you do the olive oil, you won't get that burn on the butter, but you'll still get that crispness. So it's a good, happy compromise.
You have a question? Do you ever grill ribs?
I do grill ribs in the summer. We are working on doing a remodel. I got like part of my Mother's Day gift from my husband and the kids is a new outdoor kitchen. So we're going to be ripping out and buying. My old grill has gone, and so we're getting a new grill. We have a smoker, and then we're going to get a Blackstone, and we're going to have this nice little outdoor kitchen that's going to be built this summer for me. So I do grill. That is a labor of love. Grilling or smoking ribs is delicious, but that is very time consuming. I used to smoke my meats a lot during weekends, and we'd have soccer games. So I would smell like a smoke pit because, you get really stinky out there constantly like feeding it or doing stuff and taking care of it. And I would like go to my good soccer games and I'm like, stay away from me. I smell awful. And then, by the time we got home, it would be nice and ready and delicious. And we'd have a great like briskets and stuff. So it is a labor of love. I absolutely love it, but you can get a little stinky with it. Now, if you have and my mom has a green egg, and it is amazing. I smoked a turkey this year for Thanksgiving on it. So we baked some, smoked one, and then we get a couple delivered because we've got to feed like 50 people. And it turned out so good. I've never smoked a whole huge, it was a 28-pound turkey, so it was a huge turkey. And it turned out amazing. But they work so well. You don't have to do that much tending to them. We're going to put in about a teaspoon of garlic. We're going to let this kind of sizzle up, flavor this buttery oil, and then we're going to put our kale in. Now I always like to buy the pre-cut, pre-washed kale. It's a little bit easier to work with, but occasionally you'll get a huge piece like this. So you're going to want to take that out because that's not going to be good. Any big stems, pull those off. And then we can just slowly throw in. You could also buy the full-on kale leaves and take care of it yourself. But if you do buy the bags like this, which is just a bit easier, I find, just make sure you pull off some of those stems because they're more bitter than the kale leaf, and they don't have as nice of a texture. So we'll throw them in here. But this is just a little bit easier to work with because when you get the full-on kale leaves, you know, you've got to de-stem them, and you got to put them through a salad spinner and extra work. And I was like, this makes it a little bit easier. And find a couple more, pull them off. Now you could also buy like the baby kale leaves, which also work really well. They're a bit more tender, and they've already cleaned those off fairly well. Okay, I think that should be good. We'll save that kale for another day. I always try to make just enough food that there is minimal leftovers, because I find if I don't give my leftovers to my stepdad, leftovers go into the fridge to die. And then I clean them out like a week and a half later. We're not big leftover eaters here. So I always try to make sure we have just enough food to feed our family. Plus, we always have baked goods. So there's always, nobody goes hungry in this house, I'll tell you that.
You have a question, is it beef or pork ribs tonight?
Pork ribs. So I personally love beef ribs. I think they're the best. But my family does not agree with me on that. And I don't know if it's because I grew up in Iowa and beef ribs were a really big thing there. And we had this in Ames, Iowa, where I'm from originally. There's this restaurant there called Hickory Park. And we always got to go there like this is back in the 90s, but we always went out to eat on somebody's birthday, and it was either at the time Hickory Park, which is a rib joint, or Red Lobster, which was super bougie back in the 90s, and delicious. So it was happening. But whenever you went to Hickory Park, you always got the beef ribs, because everybody was like, oh, you got so much more meat on the beef ribs. And then they had like bougie sodas that they would make and sundaes.
Yeah, question. Does the kale cook down like spinach?
Not as much as spinach. Spinach really reduces down. It's much more delicate. Kale will get more malleable, but it has most of its body. It doesn't let out as much liquid. So kale is closer to cabbage than it is to spinach. So it's going to have a more chewy texture. It has a bit more of a bitter flavor to it. It's got like that, it's a crucifer, and so it's in the same family as cabbage and broccoli. But it does get down a little bit smaller, as you can see, but not as much as spinach. Spinach would like reduce down to like a fourth of this pan. This is where you see it is about as little as it's going to go, because it's just a much more fibrous veggie than spinach is. Okay, now we're going to use some garlic salt and some half and half. We're going to add our little garlic salt. This is like really sad, guys, because as you know me, I love garlic salt. And this is all of my garlic salt. So clearly I have to go to the store tomorrow, because how can I make dinner without garlic salt? So we're going to add in, I think we had about a half a teaspoon in here. But you need garlic salt, makes it so much better than regular salt. And it's not quite, doesn't have as much sodium in it, because it's garlic juice and salt that has been like dehydrated down. So you get a more evenly spread of saltiness without quite as much sodium. And it's just delicious. There we go. So we're going to toss it. Now we're going to start, I'm going to turn my thing down. I already got it on too. We're going to start with about a third cup of cream, and we're going to let it reduce down. So my cream kale does not have any flour in it. It's really that the cream, this is half and half, but it's reducing down, which will thicken it up. But it is so good. As you can see, it's already starting to evaporate. And what will happen is the liquid part, like the water base of the half and half, will dissolve away, but it will leave around a nice kind of rich, creamy base. Okay. Beautiful. We're going to add. Okay, we're going to let that kind of simmer here. And you know what? We've got a little bit of parsley and green onions here. We're just going to throw these spices in because they'll just be good. Let's not go to waste. We're going to use our clean side to cut up our watermelon. Okay, so let me give this a good stir. I'm going to go wash my knife because I don't want twice baked potatoed watermelon. Okay. We can get our container. And we're going to cut up the other half of our watermelon. So the other day we made Kool-Aid watermelon. So if you take fresh watermelon, you can coat it in a little bit of that full sugar Kool-Aid. It's so good. We already ate through that half, so we're going to cut through this.
You have a question? How did the kids enjoy that?
Oh, they absolutely loved it. So Evie, my weird one who doesn't like anything, I swear, she loved it. She loved the tropical punch one, and she ate all of it when she normally won't even touch watermelon. But she loved it. Teddy and Jack loved it. Torrin loved it. Lena, she said it was good, but she preferred regular watermelon over it. And I think she's kind of, she likes her things not jazzed up as much. Next, I want to try lemonade or a limeade, like powderize one of those, or maybe even make my own, and I think it'll be delicious. You give this a nice stir. I'm going to add a smidge more. We'll let it reduce down. There we go. I'm just going to let it simmer in there. That's going to help make your kale like more tender. Okay, and then we're going to chop these up. I'm going to start with what I have, this bunch here. I'll just slide our knife along. So I always just kind of make it into nice triangles, and then you can use your little base on there to slide it around, and it's much easier to chop up. And like I say, chop it up yourself and save that extra money.
You have a question? Do the kids ever complain about eating late?
No, not really. They actually complain when we eat early. So if we have dinner, sometimes we'll do an early Sunday dinner for my parents because they really can't. You know, they're like what they always say about seniors who eat at like 4 p.m. They would totally eat at 4 p.m. if you let them. They typically, when they come over for a Sunday dinner, it will be like 5:30, pressing it. And then my kids are always like, they eat it and they think it's so weird. And then about when 8 o'clock, 8:30 rolls around, they're like, what's for dinner? And I'm like, we already ate dinner. And they're like, no, we didn't. That was lunch. So they're kind of just like used to it. My kids are a little bit, different. They eat late, like they wake up late, they'll eat late lunches and breakfast. My daughter doesn't like school food, so she like packs herself a little snack and then she like waits until I pick her up and then she'll eat whatever we have for lunch because she's like, school food's the worst. I'm like, it's fine with me. Eat how you want to eat. My son always comes in. I pack him lunch, but he comes in and he's like, ooh, what else? What's my second lunch? And I was like, I packed you a whole lunch this morning. He's like, I know, but I'm hungry. But I feel like growing boys, they are always hungry. Okay. Get this last little. I will say this watermelon turned out great. It was such a fresh watermelon. This is the first big watermelon I've gotten of the season. Most of the time I just get the little seedless ones because that's all you can find in the stores until summer hits. And then you can get the big ones. But, seedless ones, I feel like you never know if you're going to get a good one with those because they're very temperamental.
You have a question. At what age did you realize you loved cooking?
Pretty young age. I actually started cooking for my family when I was in middle school, when I was 13 years old. And I loved it. I started simple. We all kind of took over one meal a week. We're going to go grab our sourdough out because it's beeping. And I slowly started to take over my other siblings' meals into where I was cooking like 5 days a week. And it was the best chore in our house. And it was like my favorite. It was fun. You got to pick what was for dinner. Look at our beautiful chocolate cherry walnut sourdough. Let me grab my trivet here. I'm gonna pop this out. So this is made with my chocolate starter that we've been making up the other day. I'm gonna pull this out. You want to get it out as your Dutch oven. But here is our chocolate cherry sour or walnut sourdough made with our chocolate starter. And then we also added more cocoa powder to the base of it. So it's a really rich chocolatiness, as you can see by the color. Then we added in cherries, walnuts, and like semi-sweet chocolate chips. We did that. We folded them in when we were doing the laminating process. And now we have this just beautiful, gorgeous loaf, which is poppin', I'm going to tell you. Has a nice little spotted skin to it, that chewy crust. And then the reason we take it out is you don't want it to burn. So look at this nice, just light brown color. I mean, it's hard to tell so much versus it being a chocolate one, but you take it out of the Dutch oven right away and you're just going to let it sit for about 15-20 minutes before you cut into it, and it will be just gorgeous. I'm going to slide this over here and let's get the rest of our watermelon cut up, and then our ribs and are almost done. So we'll pop those out and dinner will be served. We actually were going to start dinner a little bit earlier today. I was like, oh, the kids don't have any sports. We're winding down for the summer. But they all went to the neighborhood pool, my older bunch. And I was like, when are they coming back? Are they coming back? They didn't like get back until like 7:30, 7:45. So I was like, well, I can't start dinner until. And you know, when they're swimming, they don't check their phone, which I noticed.
What's your best tips for picking a good watermelon?
Okay, so when you look on your watermelon, there's typically always a light colored spot, white, yellow. Grab the one that is yellow. That means it's going to be sweeter. White means that it is waterlogged, it grew really fast with a big rainfall. Also look for even spacing between the veining and a rich dark green veining. Those are all going to show that they grew evenly. It didn't grow super fast with a rainfall, which makes them not as sweet and more mealy. So those, I will say, it works out about 90% of the time. Sometimes you're going to have one of those that just like had all the indicators of being great and then it was like, meh. But most of the time this always works out.
What is that?
That's what?
I take a piece, I get snapped at.
Yeah, because I'm the chef and I get to have a piece when I want to. It's called poison control. Got to make sure it's not poisonous. Okay, here, our cream kale, lovely, nice and soft. Let me pull out. It's going to be steamy, so I'm going to step back. We're going to first start with our twice baked potatoes. Look at those. Let me slide that out of the way. He's stealing watermelon. He just yelled at me for stealing watermelon. I looked back for 1 second. And then here are our ribs. I'm going to be very careful because they have those juices. But you see how when you baste it on and you have that nice kind of crust now. I'm trying to get it all evenly on my trivet. Close this off. But it gives you that kind of as if they were on the grill. Close it up. And then we'll go over with one last basting. Really?
Do you have a question? Are any of the kids picky eaters?
You know what? They go through stages, except for Evie. Evie's a picky eater, but she's got weird foods that she likes. Loves tomatoes, peppers, loves salad and salmon and things. Doesn't like potatoes. Weird. You know what I mean? She's like, so she has some things that are very like things that everybody likes, she doesn't like. Things that most people don't like, she loves. She eats straight up lemons and limes. She always like when she loves wasabi. Like she has a very, very strange food palate. And I think it was because when she was born, she didn't know how to eat. So she was on a feeding tube for about 6 months because every time she swallowed, she aspirated into her lungs. And so she spent like a whole month in the hospital in the PICU because we went home and then she started, having distress. And they finally figured out that she just didn't know how to swallow and aspirate it every time, and her lungs were a little bit underdeveloped. So I think she went 6 months with nothing by mouth. She had a feeding tube that went straight to her jejunum, so even bypassed her stomach. And I think once she got food, she picked the extremes and everything, and that's what she likes, the extreme flavors. But let's serve up our dinner. And get a knife to kind of cut through these ribs. Okay. Just slide my beautiful, I'm so excited for this chocolate sourdough loaf. I just took on the adventure of making a chocolate starter. And so this is the first loaf I've made with a chocolate starter, and it turned out picture perfect. So hopefully it tastes good, but I think it's gorgeous. Okay. We're going to cut our ribs here. You see how they're just so tender. I'm trying to slide up underneath them. So we got our beautiful oven roasted ribs. These are just in the oven for about 3 hours in a tidbit. We're going to add in a twice baked potato, scrumptious, our creamed kale, slide. And then, of course, we'll have our watermelon and some of our chocolate sourdough for dinner tonight. Well, guys, thank you so much for joining us here today. Don't forget to like and subscribe. I try to do live cooking shows every single day, show you what we're making for our family, and hopefully teach you guys something along the way. Again, we do upload all of our videos to the link on our page. So if you ever want to recreate any of our recipes at home, you can just find that video, rewatch it, and cook along with me again. We will also be adding it was about 7 minutes of prep for the potatoes and the ribs before they went into the oven to the beginning of this video. So if you want to make these ribs at home, you'll have all of the dry rub spice mix and everything to add to that as well. But again, guys, thank you so much for joining us here today. Don't forget to